everybody. Welcome to the City Girls Pod, and this is the show where we are recapping back seasons of Sex and the City, and just like that, we're having so much fun. I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Jax is here.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm great. I do feel like the episodes just keep getting more fun and spicier.
Yeah, we have these three are really good, and a lot of character growth, really, for our characters in these episodes.
And meeting one of our favorite characters.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited to talk about it. We're talking about season 2, episode 7, 8, and 9 today. So it's going to be fun. And with our normal reminder, this show is a mature podcast about a mature show. So if this is not your jam, we got tons of other stuff on Hallmarky's Pod you can listen to. So there's no reason you have to listen to this if you don't want.
Don't slog through it if you're not ready for a mature podcast about a mature show with two mature women.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so the first episode we're going to talk about is episode 7, called The Chicken Dance. And this is all sort of around their friend Madeline is first decorating Miranda's apartment, but then she ends up meeting one of Miranda's friends and named Jeremy. He says he's ready to get married. He meets Madeline. They fall in love instantly, and they get married. 4 weeks later, I think they said?
Yes.
Yeah, 4 weeks later, they get married, and it causes just all kinds of shenanigans to go down. So I'm excited to talk about this episode. And Carrie has a lot of big moments with this, and then also she reads this poem we'll talk about. But overall, what do you think about this one?
This one I thought is another one that's very peak Sex in the City, where we're getting to see a lot of fun storylines from our core four. And then a lot is happening with Big, which is interesting. And it's posing this really important question of, do you believe in love at first sight? So it's thought that they were sort of firing on all those cylinders in this episode.
Yeah, I guess we should ask, do you, Jax, do you believe in love at first sight?
No. Well, I believe that spark chemistry at first sight. And here's how I describe this. I feel like sometimes when I meet certain people, and not even in a romantic way, like the little girl I babysat for since she was a little girl, when I met her, there was something about her and I'm like, you're in my life forever. I know you. We're meant to be connected. There's something in our souls that we're connected. I believe in that, but I don't believe in this notion of you lay eyes on someone for the first time romantically and you know that it's just going to work out. Like a real love takes the act of loving and instead of just a feeling. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it partly depends on your definition of love. What
sorry,
that
that's means. My cat's tail. I'm sorry.
That was love at first sight, you and your cat, right?
That's true, actually. Yes.
I've heard the story before. I don't necessarily think it takes all that long. I believe you can know pretty quickly. I mean, on How I Met Your Mother, Barney would talk about the lemon law, that you can basically know within the first 20 minutes of a date if it's a match. And Robin at first is like, no, that's ridiculous. You have to get to know somebody. But then she goes on this date with the Star Wars nerd. She's just like, because he sets her. And I do think you kind of know, like, this has potential at least. And I don't know. I don't know if I believe that in this sort of magic thing, but there is a philosophical concept to all of this, that the response, what's called the response of the other, right? So you meet somebody, you respond to their humanity as a person, right? And then what happens is that then certain society will get you to take away that response, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll take away that humanity. So they'll make a person as, instead of being a human, a person is a slave, a person is a whatever, fill in the blank. And that allows you to remove that response. But it is a natural thing that we have to be kind of talked out of is that response to the human. And I do think that certain people that we just have more of that response. And I'm a spiritual person, so I believe that there are people that God wants us to know, and that that are, as you said, supposed to be in our lives. So I think I maybe kind of do.
You're such a Charlotte. The way you just articulated it so beautifully makes it have so much more substance than just, I think when we talk about it as the whole love at first sight, googly eyes thing, I think that's what I sort of have a little bit of resistance to. But the way you just said it made me feel a little tingly inside. So
Yeah, I mean, I've heard enough people that have said they saw the person and they knew that that was the person they were going to marry. I've heard so many people tell those stories. My uncle Vernon will tell. He tells it so funny, but he says the first time he saw my Aunt Chris, he knew that he was going to marry her, and there was no doubt. And I've heard that for quite a few people that have had that experience. But obviously, like, real love does take time to kind of cultivate. And I mean, my cousin Kristen, she met her husband in March, I think, of a year, and then they got married in June. So that was really fast. They got engaged like in 2 weeks, really fast. But they're still married. They seem to be doing great. So sometimes when you know.
You know what I love, and I'm pretty sure you've seen the Linklater trilogy, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. I love the scene where they've just met, and Ethan Hawke's character is saying to Julia Delpy's character, if I had a choice right now between marrying you and never seeing you again, I would marry you. And I think that there have been people in my life, or like I feel this way about my fiance, Alex. I didn't want to get engaged right when I met him, but if it would have been a choice in that moment, if I never see you again and I get engaged, I would have done that. And I think that always in that movie made me go like, oh, that's a version of this that I can get on board with, that, you feel something that is, you hope will last.
I also loved the fact that the 4 girls were all, sitting on the stoop talking about this when they were talking about love at first sight. And I thought that was just such a cute set piece and moment.
Yeah, I do too. It's so iconic, New York, hanging out on the stoop, and then it's the 4 of them that are sort of in this together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, and Miranda's struggling because she invited this guy over to stay with her, and then he ended up falling in love with her decorator, and she's like, am I invisible? What's happening? But it seemed like there was almost nothing in common between Miranda and Madeline. So the fact that he didn't go for her is not really surprising, because it seems like they're totally different people.
Yeah, Madeline is also a friend of Charlotte's, and that's how Miranda got introduced to her. And Madeline seems a lot more like Charlotte to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so Big gives them 3 months. He's very cynical about it, but I mean, I guess that makes sense. If how many times has he been married? 3, 4, something like that. A lot.
Or like enough for like he's saying how many women he's giving keys to. He talks about that in another episode, but yeah, he's pretty cynical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We also have Samantha. She has now had relations with everybody in New York City, every single man in New York City, and more.
And she realizes that
because she has a deja vu relationship. She realizes, I've been with this person before.
I love that dude knew that they had been together before, but thought that Samantha was playing like a sexy game of stranger. And she's like, no, I thought that you were a stranger.
Yeah, there is another really good How I Met Your Mother episode where Ted goes on a date with this girl, and he realizes that they'd been on a date before. And so then they go back through all of what happened on their original date to see why it didn't work out. And he's like, "Yeah, you were pretentious. You were," and that's a good one. It's clever.
I love that episode. And I had a moment like that when I was dating, where I was on a dating app. I forget which app it was, because I did them all, but I was chatting with this guy, and then we were like, oh, this is fun. There was good banter. Let's exchange numbers and we'll make a date. I put his number into my phone, and I had already had his number as a contact in my phone. I was like, we've done this before. We've done this before. And for some reason, we never went on a date and the conversation died. So I thought, oh, okay. And that was already after being single for a little while. I was like, I've been in the game for a minute now.
Yeah, Samantha, she says, well, I have to either move or get married.
What you got?
Really good. So Charlotte decides that she's going to be a sexy bridesmaid at this wedding. So she wears I thought a cute dress. It wasn't that sexy, but for Charlotte, I guess it was.
I didn't think it was inappropriately attention seeking.
Yeah.
I thought she looked lovely.
Mm-hmm. And but she wants people to look at her. She starts flirting with this guy named Martin. And he's the one that kind of walks her down the aisle. He's the groomsman or whatever in the wedding. And yeah, they're super attracted to each other. He gives a speech, and then it turns out that his parents are there, and his dad tries to make a move on to Charlotte. She tells Martin, and he doesn't believe her. He thinks she's lying. And so that goes up in smoke real quick.
Yeah. So I empathize with Martin for one hot second, where I could see why you wouldn't want to believe something about your parents like that. But when he lashed out at her and said, something about her wearing a revealing dress, he used a not this nice word. And the way he snapped back at her with such venom, it's like, oh, you're a trash person. I don't like you. Like, I could understand if he was like, wait, are you sure? Or was a little resistant because he just met Charlotte and, his dad is his dad. But I just could not believe the viciousness with which he attacked her.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, she was right when she said that he's obviously never going to take my side on anything. And so that's the end of that relationship. So also, Carrie is asked to write a poem because Madeline is a big fan of her column. She's asked to write a poem, which is like a totally different thing. To write a poem is really hard. I write reviews, I write other things. I've done NaNoWriMo, I've written fiction on, just for fun. And I took a poetry class in college. We had to write this like little couplet. It was like no big deal. It took me weeks. It was so hard.
Poetry is not easy.
No, it was difficult. I'm like, I'm clearly somebody whose job is to enjoy poetry, not write it myself, because it's tough. And just because she's has a column does not mean she can write poetry.
I was surprised that she did do a great job of it, especially that last line.
Yeah.
She was a question to be answered, and his answer was, I do.
Yes, I have the poem here.
You have the full poem?
I do, yeah. I have, his hello was the end of her endings. Her laugh was their first step down the aisle. His hand would be hers to hold forever. His forever was as simple as her smile. She said instantly she knew she was a question to be answered. And his answer was, I do. Adorable. So good job, Carrie. Way to go.
Great job, Carrie, especially because you had to read that poem while your bogus boyfriend was on a phone call.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like Big, I mean, he's been in all these failed relationships. You think he would know, kind of have a little more of a clue of what does and doesn't work at this point. And basically, if your significant other is performing, it doesn't matter if you don't like it. If you like, I mean, even just a friend, honestly, like if we lived in the same city and you were in a show, I would go to your show, even if I had no interest in it. Even though I probably would
answer the phone in the middle of it.
Yeah, no, I would never do that. And it's just about friendship, kindness, caring about people that you're with.
Well, I found in this trio of episodes, actually, I found Big to be both really charming and endearing and really infuriating and confusing. And I think that at the top of this, he gives her the toothbrush head, the pink toothbrush head, and is trying to like welcome her to stay at his place. And then he wants to go to the wedding. So she is not even initially going to invite him, but he wants to go. But then he gets weird when his name is on the invite with her. And he's like, how did they get my name?
And he won't sign the card, which is so rude.
So rude. And actually, it was nice for her to be like, sign the card so that he didn't have to get something on his own. He says, well, they're your friends. It's like, Big, you were just.
Well, and then he wants to leave before they even throw the bouquet or anything. They haven't had cake. He's just not he's not a very good partner. He did look very attractive in the suit though, in the tux. I think that's the first time that we've seen Big in a tux. He looked good.
I love the way your voice softened with that. You're like, well, he's not a good partner, but wow. The man can wear a tux.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't listened to the Bridgerton recap, you'll hear a lot more of that.
I need to catch up on Bridgerton, and then I'm going to listen to that because that sounds great.
Yeah. So Carrie, she has this pink dress that she wears to the wedding, and I really liked the dress. I did not like that color because I just felt like it washes her out. I don't think people that have blonde hair should wear like pastel colors. It just makes you, it's kind of like when she was wearing the naked dress. It just, by design, was supposed to wash her out, but I don't know. I think she looks so pretty in bright colors. And I think the bright colors are so Carrie,
Although even though she was not feeling herself in this episode, I thought Miranda looked gorgeous at the wedding. I liked her dress.
Yeah. So I do have to ask, as a New Yorker, do you not buy furniture until out of towners are coming to town?
Oh my goodness. I loved that. Yeah, I feel like until I know I'm going to have a visitor, things do not need to be in good working order. But for my apartment that I moved into in June, I guess, my mom and dad were coming that weekend, so I had to get my act together real quickly.
Yeah. That was funny to me. And I think that's true for so many of us, that there's so many places that we live by that we never visit until somebody comes to town, and then we're like taking them all around. And there's things that I got to get the guest room fixed up. Somebody's coming.
Presentable.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you give this episode 1 to 10? What do you think?
Oh, I would give this one an 8.2. I liked it. I think it's very iconic Sex in the City. But there are parts of it that frustrated me, not from a perspective of storytelling, but just, Big wasn't making me feel all warm and fuzzy. And at the end, they go home together like it's supposed to make us feel all warm and fuzzy. So I would give it an 8.2. What about you?
I agree. I would say an 8. Yeah, I think that's probably it was pretty good. Had a lot of fun moments, and the poem was really good. But yeah. So, all right. We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
Episode 8. In this episode, we have Big, and Big has some high moments, some low moments. Mm-hmm. And Samantha starts dating an older man. And so that's this one. And basically, and then we also meet Miranda meets Steve. Steve's a
Oh,
bartender who we all love so much and was treated. I mean, this just reaffirmed he was done wrong and just like that. And if they don't fix that in season 2, I will be furious. They have to know how annoyed everybody was, and they have to fix that.
I am with you, girl. Justice for Steve, because we see not only is he charming and sweet to her, the man in their first sexual encounter made her come twice. And look,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, if she can't go back and erase history, I'm not saying that she doesn't want to be with women now or she doesn't want to be with other people now, but don't negate everything you have with Steve. At one time, it was hot and popping.
Yeah. The fact that they're supposedly haven't had sex in 10 years and just like that is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, truly.
So, yeah. Well, so Big, he introduces Carrie as his girlfriend for the first time. So that is kind of a big moment. And I don't know if you noticed that they are in Cantorini's where we just had dinner.
Our restaurant.
Our restaurant. That's right. It was very exciting. I was like, oh.
I thought it was really cool.
Like they have
I
the
got
same
excited.
wallpaper.
This is Rachel and Jax's place.
Yeah, that's right. And then he sings karaoke to her, which was cute.
Oh, I have to say, Rachel, the top of this episode, they're probably a little tipsy. They're stumbling into the restaurant. They're having fun. They look so happy. He sings. Carrie laughs and almost spits out her wine because it's so funny. He introduces her as his girlfriend. This is, all the good Carrie and Big vibes, which is why they have chemistry and why you feel like they should be together. And then the toxicity hits.
Right. And so then Miranda is at a comedy club and they say that it is that's hell or its equivalent, the comedy club. I have to agree. The only thing worse, in my opinion, than a comedy club is an improv comedy club. I hate improv. I mean, there, of course, you've got like the whose line is it anyway? The people that are masters at it, that are incredible. That's one thing. I used to have a friend that was always trying to get me to go to the improv. And I was just like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I just don't like it. I don't think it's funny. And I don't know, not for me.
Well, and as someone who actively likes to root for performers, like my best friend is on a sketch team. So when I ask people to go to his show, they're like, oh no, I don't like improv. I'm like, no, it's sketch. It's sketch. Don't worry. They've rehearsed it. I promise you it's good.
Yes. And I get it that the whole thing of improv is just keep saying yes to everything. And I don't know. I don't like it. But I'm trying to think. I have been to improv clubs. I don't know if I've ever really been to a comedy club. I've been to stand-up before. I've actually seen Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that was fun. I saw Brian Regan twice, who's so good. Have you ever heard of him, Brian Regan?
No.
You definitely should listen to him. Everybody, the Hallmarkies will love Brian Regan. He's super family friendly, clean, hilarious, so good. He has, I think, 2 specials on Netflix. So,
oh my gosh.
and his CDs are just so funny. He's great.
Brian Regan?
Brian Regan, yeah,
okay.
Regan. He has a whole bit that he does about the fact that on the Pop-Tarts box, they have microwave directions. And he's like, just in case the toaster like, and it says like microwave for, I think, 8 seconds. He's like, if you need to get from nothing to food in 8 seconds, he's very funny. I highly recommend Brian Regan. And like I said, I think Hallmarkies will really enjoy him because he's very clean.
Well, and I don't necessarily need all my comedy to be clean comedy, but what I really don't like is comedy that just has very nasty combative tone. And this comedian was so vile He was so mean and I couldn't stand it.
Yeah, he was terrible, and just kind of badgering the audience. And so that wasn't great. That was bad. And I mean, if you want something edgier that's very funny, is our friend Jen Kirkman. Her specials on Netflix are very funny. Definitely, not Hallmark approved, but
She's hilarious.
She's really funny. So check that out. But he was terrible, but she's there with a comic, and they had bonded. And his phone rings, and this is before the day of security codes. So she answers it because the guy is badgering her about it, and it's this guy's wife, which is super, super terrible.
Yeah, I mean, he did two things wrong. He's cheating, and also he left his phone on and unattended during a show. It's like, come on, dude.
So then Charlotte claims that a friend of her friends, of her friend, that had dated a married guy, and that the guy left his wife and are becoming an amazing father. And they claim this is an urban relationship myth. And I agree. I mean, I'm not saying it's never happened. I'm sure it has happened, but I certainly wouldn't count on it happening. And I certainly wouldn't enter into a relationship with a married person expecting it to happen. That's for sure, because of this relationship urban myth.
Yeah. And I thought that the way they set this up is great too, with, Charlotte saying, this happened to my friend of a friend. It's like, oh no, it's an urban legend that these things, and it's not just about married people and things like that, but it's these stories that you hear that give you hope that someone probably made up to give false hope, at least in these instances.
Yeah. And she says, and so then she says, well, what about Big and Carrie? And Miranda says, yeah, that hasn't changed at all. And Carrie tries to make it seem like it's changed, but she's kind of talking herself into it. So she says, do modern day singles need modern day myths to kind of get through it? Yeah. And so then we have Big making veal for Carrie, but then Miranda calls and says, why aren't you here? And that I definitely take issue with, because it doesn't matter if your guy's making veal, you shouldn't still stand up your friend.
This bummed me out.
Yeah,
I mean,
it did.
And not only Carrie canceling bummed me out, because I don't think that that's right. I wouldn't do it to a friend, and I hope a friend wouldn't do it to me. However, let's just say it happens. Give people space if they're really excited about a relationship. Say it happens. You at least need to be properly apologetic and empathetic to their feelings. And Carrie, she had 2 strikes against her. She canceled, and then she wasn't properly apologetic about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, agreed. She's like, you're not only eating veal, eating politically incorrect meal, but you're also just standing up your friend. It's super rude. And then also we have Samantha. We get our first introduction of Donald Trump in this episode.
That knocked an automatic point off of it for me.
And it's just so interesting how life has changed. We would never have guessed in a million years what has happened, but she's got a Cosmopolitan and Donald Trump. You don't get more New York than that.
It's so funny. How could we?
Yeah.
And also, it's even humorous to think about that, and then to think about Cynthia Nixon running for office. It's like, what is going on?
Well, and it's not only this show. He was also, because I did the Fran cast, he was also on The Nanny like at least twice, which is just crazy. I don't know. It's funny.
He's got plenty of SAG credits there.
Yeah, I guess he does. He does.
More power to him.
And here's the thing with this old man that's named Ed, who starts dating Samantha. I don't understand why she has a problem with this. I mean, he seems charming. He seems nice. She's never really had boundaries that I've seen. And I don't know. Age is just a number. I don't understand why it's a big deal.
I think that he seems smarmy. However, I don't think that has anything to do with his age. And I don't think he's any more or less appealing than other men she's dated. Does that make sense? Like, to me, the age is also inconsequential.
What part of it seems smarmy to you? The fact he's giving her all the necklaces, or?
Okay, I just have a weird thing. Like, okay, he's just doing this like deal with Trump, and then he comes over and like he's flaunting his money and the way he's talking to her. I prefer, again, this is just a me thing. I'm more of someone who pursues people. So I tend to like people that are a little bit maybe not shy, but not that bold. So it's probably just more what I'm attracted to rather than having his personal against this guy.
Yeah, I thought that he was pretty charming. I can see what you're saying. But I was surprised that Samantha had such an issue, I guess, with him. But
I'm surprised he hasn't dated guys that age already.
A lot. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Exactly. And then Miranda, because Carrie blew her off to be with Big for the veal, she starts chatting with Steve, the bartender. And I asked on Twitter, I said, is the whole idea of the bartender philosopher that you see so often? I was like, is that real? Because I'm not a drinker, so I have never been in a bar, and I except for ones that are like attached to restaurants and stuff. So I really don't know. And I got a ton of responses. Found it. So I asked the question. I said, as a non-drinker, is the whole thing of a therapist bartender who you share all your problems with a real thing? So here's some of the answers I got. I have Rachel McMillan, our friend. She says, I often take my laptop to pubs and overhear all manner of convos. And yes, this is a thing. At my regular haunts, I overhear so many ongoing episodes. Bartenders are not paid enough. Cam Christian says, it's a very real thing, 15 years in that business. Rachel Master says, no, they want you out of their face as soon as possible, unless it's a local where everybody knows your name type pub like Atmosphere. In Search of a Better Name says, I wish I probably would have appreciated it more when really hanging around bars around 2015 to 2020. Katie Carter says, oh, 100% yes. Movies, places depends, but I think it's kind of like that movie TV stereotype where all barbers are therapists for men. DZ Weifler says, if you were single in the time before the internet, you could go into a bar and talk to absolute strangers who were often happy to converse with you, bartenders included. Another of life's small pleasures gone by having this and other hell sites a click away on your phone. Nathaniel Rogers says, I love going to bars, but have never witnessed it. Maybe it's an alcoholics only thing where they constantly at the same bar being served by the same person. Anyway, it goes on. I had a ton of responses, but I thought that was interesting as somebody, again, who does not drink, have never really been in a bar. This whole idea that you see in so many movies of this sort of therapist bartender. I don't know if you have any experience opinion one way or another on this one.
I definitely think it's true in the sense that not only I've experienced it a little bit, but not a ton. I like bars, but I don't go that frequently. But actually, my fiance, Alex, I met him through my friend who was his bartender. And we had dinner the other night. It was Alex and me, and then my friend Samantha and her boyfriend. She met her boyfriend at the bar, and she met my guy at the bar. So like she was their therapist bartender, and now she's dating one and I'm dating the other. So I think it's really funny because they totally would spill their guts to her.
That's interesting.
So yeah, I think it's true. I've seen it in action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. But how just charming is Steve? He's just great.
Oh, Rachel. He is. Oh, I just wanted to climb through the TV and just like pinch his cheeks and like I kiss him on the mouth. Frankly, yeah. I did. Did you?
Yes. He was so dreamy and charming, and especially when Big is being such a butt. And so you've got this contrast, and Carrie says, how could I believe the urban relationship myth where a self-centered 42-year-old magically transformed into a grown man you could bring out in public? And so then you've got Steve, who is the opposite, who is so charming when he's like, why do you hate guys so much? And maybe I'm not some full of blank guy. Like, that was just so refreshing and great, because how often do we see that like girl power equals hating men? And I hate that. That's awful. And so here he's kind of calling her on that and calling Miranda on her BS, for lack of a better word.
Well, I think you actually have the perfect word. Like, I think Miranda is, look, I understand why she's upset. I'd be upset if my best friend canceled on me too, but she was given some serious toot. He called her on it and then gave her a wonderful night.
Yeah.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
And she asks Big to meet her friends, and she's excited about it. She wants him to be in their life, and that's like so understandable. You don't have to be their best friends, but you certainly should meet them. You should know them, because they're going to be a part of your life. I mean, I don't know. It's just common courtesy, I think, in a relationship.
And look, it's not as if Carrie's friends are boring people,
Right?
or people that are so outside of what he would connect to.
Right.
I don't understand why he wouldn't want to.
Or you just have like a meal.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has to eat dinner, so you eat dinner with her friends. Who cares? It's ridiculous.
Well, you and I are in the camp of we'll have a meal with anyone.
Yeah, that's true.
I laugh about you saying that all the time. I think it's one of the cutest, most endearing things. And I'm of the same mind. Like, if you're free, we've got to eat dinner.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he just go meet her friends?
Mm-hmm. There used to be somebody, I never did it and I regretted it, but there used to be this person who in where I used to live, where it was like on social media or whatever, everybody knew that he would be at a local particular restaurant every Thursday or whatever, and I think I read an article about it or something, and that it kind of chronicled all the different people. He's like, come and we'll have a meal together. And he did a thing about all the different people that took him up on that and that had a meal with it. And I think stuff like that, that's like the glory of social media. That's social media at its best, when it connects us to each other and gets us to understand people we wouldn't have come in contact with otherwise. But I mean, here, Big, he's not even willing to meet like very important people. It's not like this is just, say they were having a New York Times meeting, with her associates and other people, or that horrible podcast that I can understand not wanting to be involved in. not meeting her best friends. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And it's just so bonkers, because it's not as if they haven't been dating a long time. Like, this is not rushing anything along.
Yeah. So Miranda says that maybe she can believe in love with Steve, which is so cute. That was the night we stopped saying a myth and started being real. And then Big does come. He kind of comes begrudgingly, but he does come. So what would you give this episode 1 to 10?
Oh, I mean, okay. I'm going to give it a 9. I lost the point because Trump was in it, but it's Steve. We meet Steve.
Yeah, it's so cute.
What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think Big is frustrating, but that's part of his character arc, I guess. So yeah, I think an 8.5 or 9. Next episode 9, we basically have that there's a whole lot of men in New York who are oogling women, and including Big. And he keeps looking at women when he's with Carrie, which is so rude. Like we talked about last time about the fact that you can't necessarily turn it off, the fact that you find somebody attractive, fine. But that doesn't mean your eyes have to constantly be wandering when you're with your partner.
Yeah, Big. I mean, okay, well, I'm guilty. Well, like, I think women are beautiful. And my fiance will always say, he's like, man, if I looked at women the way that you look at women, he's like, our relationship would be in trouble. But it is that thing of just being, especially in New York. I don't think it's the fact that there are more beautiful women in New York. I just think there's more people, and you're seeing, like, in other places, people are in their cars, but in New York, we're walking, we're seeing people. And yeah, I sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, just beautiful, interesting people all around.
Maybe the problem is not as much the looking. It's the fact that Carrie doesn't feel like she can talk to him about it, about the fact that it bothers her, and that they can deal with it, I guess. That's the point of major concern, because it sounds like you and your fiance can kind of just joke about it and be like, oh, whatever. And
I'm joking.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think that's the problem, is that they just don't have a very healthy relationship. And I mean, the best that she can get out of him is that he doesn't like her eating oranges in bed. I mean, not much.
Well, and I think it's the looking, and also the scene with the cigar. He's really flirting with everyone too. And he's infuriating. Like, it's so flirty. And I don't know. I just, like, he's flirting with the waitress. He's flirting with the women at the table. Like, I know he's just trying to get what he wants. And maybe you can think of that as just he's trying to be charming or friendly, but I just don't, I don't like the vibe of it.
She also punches him in the face. I mean, we've just had this crazy thing at the Oscars, and people are all talking about assault and everything like that. Now, is that too far on Carrie's part that she punches him?
Well, he knocked her out of bed. He threw her. He didn't mean to. Actually, I wanted to ask you about this, Rachel. So, okay, it's accidental when he knocks her out of bed, but it's jarring. It's, scary for her. It might have hurt a little bit. Was her punch like a reaction, or do you think it was calculated?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like it was a reaction.
Okay, good. So did I.
Yeah, which is probably not the best thing to have a violent reaction like that, but she's just letting it all build up and build up and build up until she has that reaction. So it's an interesting thing. What did you think of drag queen bingo?
I was over the moon that Samantha met a drag queen.
Yeah, that was so funny.
And modeled herself after Samantha, because I think they used to date.
Yes. Yeah, he went drag after her. And she's kind of proud of this. She's like, she could change a man.
She did, into her. I mean, I've actually been to not drag queen bingo, but a drag queen brunch for my cousin's 21st birthday. And it was so fun. I love drag queens. I think that what they do is incredible, and it's fun and performative. And I just think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then and then we have the Charlotte is dating a guy named Mike, who's a restaurant critic. He calls her a 5-whisk woman, which made me laugh.
He does.
That was funny. And she said, so he's not circumcised, and that bothers her. And so then he ends up getting circumcised for her, but then he's like, I can experience the world. I don't need to experience you. I mean, this whole plot, it was a little bit funny, but it was just kind of there.
Yeah, I mean, I find it a little upsetting the way Charlotte, I mean, I'm probably being too serious about this, but I think talking about something as vulnerable and private as someone's genitals and critiquing them is like kind of
well, and she's not even Jewish. So at this point, so maybe I don't really understand why it would be a big issue, but
no. Well, and I think a lot of it's so, or it was, I think it's becoming less and less popular, but it was so popular for American men, regardless of their religious affiliation, to be circumcised. But a lot of people aren't, and especially men from other places. And I think it's becoming less common. So I don't know why it was such a big deal. And I hated the way they talked so negatively about what it looked like. In fact, Samantha's perspective on it was the one that I was like, yeah, you go, girl. It's great.
yeah. I mean, but I find it hard to believe she's only slept with 5 men who are
Same.
That seems hard to believe. But yeah, and then we have the problem with Steve and Miranda and their schedules not matching. Because he's a bartender, so he's out late. She's a lawyer. He wants to have romantic mornings, and it's hard for her. And so that's a tough thing, because like, what do you do? I mean, that's your job. I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah.
When your jobs don't align.
This, I thought, was a very relatable, and there's no right or wrong in this. It's just difficult. And I thought, yeah, I really liked the storyline, because I thought that they were both trying to do what they could to make it work, but it is an obstacle that has nothing to do with how much you care about the person.
Yeah. And then when he calls her, go to the window, blue moon. It was so good. I was like, how did they ruin this character? I didn't even know. It was so good.
Rachel, they need to go back and do what we're doing and do a rewatch and get themselves sorted for season 2.
HBO Max, if you're listening, call us up. We're available.
We really are. We're here for you.
We can make your show so much better.
We have ideas. We're happy to shoot down your bad ideas.
Yes.
Jax and Rachel are here.
Yes. And he says, once in a blue moon, you can change a woman. It was cute. It's really cute. So yeah, this episode I think was pretty good. So I would probably give it an 8.5.
Yeah, I would too. Big still getting under my skin, but what are you gonna do?
Maybe an 8. Maybe an 8. Yeah. So let us know, if you're listening, what you would give these episodes. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section or on Twitter at City Girls Pod. Please check us out there. And Jax, where can people find you?
At Jacqueline C Tweets on Twitter and Jacqueline Collier on Instagram.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure that you are following the Hallmarkies Podcast, or Hallmarkies Pod, and Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave us your ratings and reviews. We really appreciate that. And if you are watching on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group, and we are doing our next voicemail giveaway promo, which is very exciting. So if you want to have Will Kemp, Kevin McGarry, or Tyler Hines read your voicemail greeting, they become a Patreon. Every dollar that you are on Patreon will be an entry in whatever hunk you want to do your voicemail. And it's super fun. And we can also make a donation on Ko-Fi. Have all that information in the description. Please help us out. It means so much to us and allows us to do what we do. So take a look at that. And thanks so much, Jax. And we'll talk next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.